In this chapter, I will talk about this part of the code for tank information. It is the core class of tank games, including tank loading and tank animation. Let's get started. You can see that this tank has 3 tags. They represent the loading process of a tank, and since the loading process of the tank is asynchronous, we don't know when the model was loaded. We can only determine whether the tank with the tank loading tag has been loaded into the scene through the execution of each frame. Firstly, this setup texture is actually the 2-dimensional map that we have initialized. It is actually indexed by the tank name and the file path to which it is indexed, relative to our assets. Below the assets, then the name, frame 0. As you can see, it first distinguishes this player, and then we determine the label with this tank need load. Only then will we generate these tanks. We read the path of this tank, and then the first one is the path of the tank and the GLB. Then you can see that we differentiate based on this player. Add a water source to it with a player tag. It is actually an AI section, which means that all enemies will search for this water source and attack you. Then, we will use the corresponding enemy tag. There are fragments similar to the burst effect. This will come out and hide the object we are currently seeing during the burst. And then we will proceed with the initializing this tank. In fact, we use this to determine whether the tank already exists in this scene through this spawner. Of course, this part only involves detecting whether the entity of the tank exists, not including. And here we will use this util to obtain the collision information of this tank. Well, I have only given an example now, which is a simple box collision. Below are some of its physical properties, which are related to Rapier. Then we filter out the names of the controllers that match the bones made by Blender at that time. It will match these names and perform corresponding processing to store them in our tank info wheel. And then including this, the transformation of the cannon actually requires it, the global transformation, including the turret bone behind it, we also put it here. So that we can use them for this animation in the future. When initializing, we need to attach its texture to it, because it is equivalent to placing the model we made with Blender in another engine. It is best to have them repasted in the texture section since different engines have different rendering pipelines, including this track. Because in this game, we need to load many tanks, so we need to ensure that these materials are independent and cannot be shared. Therefore, we need to delete this material and add a new one that we have initialized now to ensure that each material is independent. When this tank is targeting enemy tanks, we will add an AI controller to it. I will explain this AI controller in detail later. After we have processed all of this, we will add the tank as a loaded tank. You can see the animation of simulating the rotation of the track, which actually means changing its index to create it. Well, after traversing the array of tracks through this index, it will perform this animation. Through forward, it is not equal to 0, whether it is forward or backward, and then multiplied by 2. Then add this value. Of course, this is actually the playback speed. You can be faster than this speed or less than this speed, but its minimum speed is 15 frames to rotate to the same location as before. Then, here is the bone animation of our rotating tire. We saved this tire and detected the forward. When the forward is not 0, rotate the tire accordingly, and its speed is 0.08, then the rotating turret is also similar. Just press Q or E, it will rotate the turret, and then the next thing is, we use a custom material to simulate the special effects of this tank's cannon. I will explain later that it is simulated using a special effect, including the lighting effect, the cannon effect of this tank, and the smoke effect, which is actually. Okay, this is the core code for the tank, which includes some loading logic and model animations. I hope it can be helpful to you. I will continue to share tutorials in the future. If you are interested in them, you can also click the subscribe button. Sincerely thank you for watching.